Is Tom talking?
Can you just do it on Discord or something where the mics work consistently? Sort
of. John's phone. I don't think John's a boomer. He doesn't know how to work.
Yeah.
That kind of a program is too
I'm
complicated
not a
for
boomer,
him.
but I have the mind of a boomer.
I can't. I mean, I've tried Discord. I don't even know how to operate it.
Same here.
Holy shit, Discord's easy. So
I mean,
fucking
I'm on
simple.
Club Deck. I'm on Club Deck. It's fine.
So Tom thinks that naturalism gives better explanatory power for all things.
yes, all things.
And all of those things would include morality. Now,
Yep.
in your model for morality, you have your own model, least imposition of will, where it seems like you're arguing that whatever least imposes on everyone's will is the best option. Now, you consider that a naturalistic explanation for morality?
Did you hear that? Moral naturalism? That's the...
Yeah, we can't hear you, man.
No,
You're cutting out.
we're not really hearing you.
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out. So, like, in other words, like if a parent and their child wants to have sex, let's say, and they're not imposing on each other's will, they mutually agree. In fact, you're saying that this is moral, objectively moral, perhaps?
If they're consenting adults, then it's, yes, moral, which has to do with the grounding of morality. The grounding of morality has to do with naturalistic things in the universe is better than...
Yep.
Now,
this entire second sentence.
Yeah, I'm having trouble too. But I mean, so I'm trying to understand it. So now, when you say naturalistic, then if it's just that they decide to procreate, well, it's gonna have possible birth complications, and you're saying that. So from then you have a conflict of either mutual consent and then the biological product of that. So how do you reconcile that?
Absolutely none of that has to do with the topic. So the grounding of morality is better explained by things that we know that exist, like laws of physics, than things that we don't know that exists, like an invisible guy in the sky.
Okay, so is it moral to have for a father and his daughter, adult daughter, to want a child?
Not just hear my argument. So my argument is that the grounding of morality is better explained by things we know that exist, like laws of physics, rather than things that we don't know that exists, like an imaginary God. So it doesn't, the particular things that are moral or are not moral are irrelevant to the grounding of morality. What a better grounding for morality is what explains the fundamental nature of morality, not what particular thing is moral.
Okay, so then you're saying that there's no epistemic basis by which to understand what is and is not moral.
Say that at all. I said that the better grounding for morality comes from that exist and not things that have no evidence that they exist.
Right, but my point is that I get the grounding part, right? That's your claim, right? But I still don't understand where you get from grounding to conscious creatures, or human beings specifically, understanding whether something is moral or not. I mean, is there not some sort of methodology by which one ascertains what is and is not moral? You mentioned something to the effect of imposition of will. I'd like to explore that.
Imposition of will has nothing to do with the epistemology. The epistemology of how we know something is moral has to do with how our brains work and how our brains interpret data and understand whatever the moral fee.
Cut out.
Do you think that our brains could change how they interpret data?
Of course they can. We know they can. That's a fact.
So basically, what may be considered moral today may be considered immoral in the future, and vice versa. Would you agree to that?
What we consider immoral is irrelevant. People consider things to be moral.
No, it would be very relevant, because if morality changes, then something like raping people today may be
No,
considered moral.
You're confusing what people
a
consider to
hold
be
on, hold on.
moral. No,
Because if there's
you made a
from
mistake.
the
You made a
evolutionary
go back.
standpoint,
Go back.
from an evolution, hold on,
Stop.
let me finish.
Stop.
No, let me finish.
You've already made a mistake.
Moderator.
Stop. So
Moderator,
you keep making the
relax, Matt.
stop.
Relax.
Stop.
Tom,
Relax,
I wanted to finish what I was having to say.
Matt, you're already finished.
Tom, I want
You've
to
already
finish what
missed
I
the
had to say.
point.
Either
Matt,
I'm
you're
going
already
to
finished.
finish or I'm not
we've
going
been
to
at this for
continue.
like 5 minutes.
Holy
Hang
shit.
out. Relax, dude.
Either
Relax.
I'm going to finish or I'm not going
Matt,
to continue.
shut up and let me respond. And then if my response is irrelevant, then you then complain. So what you're confusing what people think with what morality actually is. It's irrelevant what people think. There are psychopaths who think things all the time. People think things does not equal things are moral. What makes something moral doesn't change. What people think is moral changes
You're
all
wrong
the time.
there,
That's
Tom,
irrelevant.
because your whole argument would be based on what people think. Literally,
No.
that's your whole argument. Yes, it is.
No, that's not at all my argument.
Because then what is it based on?
Nature.
It's
So
based
it's like
upon
a
what
law
Tom
of
thinks.
physics.
Nature. So what a lion does in nature, what animals do in nature is what your morality is based on.
Law of physics. Holy shit. Law of physics. There is a literal law of physics that is morality, and that is the thing that determines what's moral.
How does
No
the
opinions.
law of
Opinions don't matter.
physics determine morality?
The same way all laws determine everything in the universe.
The same way our laws determine everything in the universe. So we appeal
and that's
to
a far
you're
better
saying
explanation.
that we appeal to the law of physics to determine raping somebody is wrong.
Yes, that's moral naturalism.
Okay,
so
have you ever heard
facts about nature?
Theory of rape?
Facts about nature determine what morality is, and that's a better
How is it
explanation than
determined?
imaginary Sky Daddy.
What is the process by which it's determined? That's what I'm like. You're like, I gave you some examples, and it seems like you avoided it like the plague. And I asked you simply if a parent wanted to have sex with
That has
their
nothing
child
to do with how it's
in order to
determined.
procreate. Well, it does. How do you determine? Well, you're claiming something. You're claiming something natural, right?
Trying to answer.
And
So how we determine what is moral is that we look at the evidence, we look at the patterns of moral intuition and moral progress, we look at the patterns over time and how it changes and try to define a principle that describes those patterns and see if that principle can correspond to something in reality. So we do it the exact same way we do anything else in science.
Okay, so I heard nothing about imposition of will in what you said. How does naturalism have the basis of imposition of another human being's will?
That's irrelevant to the topic.
Into why is it irrelevant?
Because my view isn't the only view of naturalism.
Because the basis.
So the question is naturalism better than theism? And there's lots of different views of moral naturalism. The way moral naturalism acquires evidence is by looking at the patterns in the evidence and describing principles that accurately define the pattern and then make predictions about what the pattern is going to do in the future. And that's each one of those is all better than Magical Sky Daddy did it. Magical Sky Daddy is a terrible explanation that grounds nothing. And all of these are grounded on evidence. So all of the naturalism ones are better than the theistic ones.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm not really trying to attempt a comparison. I'm really just looking at attempting to understand what you're saying by naturalistic explanation of what is moral. Do you think that there's somewhere in the ether that represents a moral obligation or duty that we can somehow determine what others ought to do?
Well, oughts are irrelevant, so oughts don't matter. But yes, there is a moral law in physics that we can just look at the moral law, and once we understand it, it will tell us what morality is.
So you're saying that you have a view of morality that does not include ought? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and that's fairly easy to demonstrate. Is something moral because you ought to do it, or ought you do it because it's moral?
And what is your answer to that?
No, I'm asking you. This is. How would you answer this question? Is something moral because you ought to do it, or ought you do it because it's moral?
Oh, well, I would say we ought to do it because it's moral.
Correct. That is the correct answer, which means oughts have nothing to do with morality. The first horn of the dilemma is saying, is something moral because you ought to do it, which means oughtness is something entailed in morality. It's required for something to be, you have to have the ought. And the second horn is you ought to do something because it's moral, which means you have some set of facts which are the moral facts. And then after you know what this set of moral facts is, you then add in this extra thing that you ought to do it, which is irrelevant to the morality. So I can prove there are no oughts in morality just by asking that question. And you just admitted, yeah, there's no oughts in morality.
So you don't want to discuss whether we can determine whether a father having sex with their child in order to procreate, if mutually consent. You're saying that you have no position on whether it's moral or not, is to be determined by some peer-reviewed consensus.
No, oh my God, that's so dumb. So I literally just explained to you why oughts aren't required in morality, and I previously said it's perfectly moral for consenting adults to do things with themselves. So it's moral for an adult and a child who are consenting adults and don't have any mental handicaps to have sexual relations. That's perfectly fine. No oughts in there. Oughts don't matter, as I demonstrated with my second argument that you just kind of ignored and just moved on from without actually addressing.
I'll be honest with you, Tom. I can't really make sense of your argument. It seems uninformative because, I mean, it just seems like you're basically saying morality, we have morals, we can figure out morals because of the laws of physics. And that just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, have you ever heard of the natural theory of rape? History of rape? You ever heard that theory? Okay, well,
no, but I don't. Wait, I don't care about that theory. So what I care about is what you said before. Like, you not thinking it makes sense is irrelevant.
Yeah,
I don't care whether it makes.
Okay.
I don't care
well,
if it makes sense.
Wait, you need to make sense, right?
Wait, go back. No.
So my question would be,
holy shit, let me finish.
See if it actually makes sense. My question would be,
go back. Stop interrupting. Holy shit, go back. Shut the fuck up. Holy shit, stop fucking talking.
So would you agree to let Tom Rabbit tell us whether it makes sense or not?
Shut the fuck up.
Would you agree to let Tom Rabbit tell us whether it makes sense?
Shut the fuck up. Oh my God.
Would you agree?
Stop talking. I'm just going to mute you on my end so I don't have to listen to you. Shut the fuck up.
How can you mute me?
Yeah, you can't do that.
You don't have
Matt, can you stop talking so we can finish, man?
Tom, would you like to straw man his argument?
Shut the fuck up, Matt. You're a fucking dumbass.
Tom,
shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up, Matt. Shut the fuck up.
What are you
doing,
Matt? Just stop for a second.
Shut the fuck up, Matt.
No, Tom, he's not making sense.
Shut the fuck up,
John
Matt.
Clearly knows he's not making sense.
Holy shit, you dumb sack of shit.
He's going to clarify.
Okay, clarify.
Holy shit, dumbass. Literally. You saying it doesn't make sense to you doesn't matter. The fact that you were a dumbass is not deflating the other. Stop talking. Stop talking. Stop talking. So, again, the fact that you're a dumbass and you don't understand things is irrelevant. Again, I'm just going to keep repeating this every time you interrupt. So, the fact that you're a dumbass and you don't understand the argument is irrelevant. It doesn't matter if it makes sense to you. An imaginary sky daddy who mass murders babies grounded in morality doesn't make sense to me, or like pretty much anyone who's rational, but I don't bring that up as an argument. The fact that your dumbass doesn't understand something isn't an argument against the position. Nature can ground morality just as well as a God can ground morality if the ontology of morality is an actual thing that exists. So you think morality is grounded in God's nature. That's fine. It's stupid because a mass murderer who drowns babies clearly doesn't ground morality. But if you think that morality can be grounded in God's nature, then it can be grounded in nature's nature. Problem solved.
Okay, so according to Randy Thornhill, who wrote the book A Natural History of Rape, and his co-author Palmer, one's an evolutionary biologist, he actually.
What does this have to do with my argument?
That I'm just responding. You don't need to worry about that at the moment.
So it has nothing to do with my argument? Why? He's not me.
Hold on, we'll see. We'll see if it has anything to do with your argument. He actually argues that rape was a way for life, humans specifically, to spread on their genetics through the evolutionary process. It was a byproduct of evolution. It was a natural process. So would you say that was somehow immoral or not? And based on what grounds is it immoral?
Yes, it's immoral. What does that have to do with my argument?
But it was a natural laws of physics.
Not all natural things are moral, clearly.
Okay, so now you seem to be contradicting yourself. So now you're saying we can't ground morality in naturalistic explanations, right?
No. Composition division fallacy.
Well, that's what it seems like you're saying to me.
Yes, because you're an idiot. I understand you're an idiot, Matt, clearly. But what I'm saying is that there is one law in physics that is the moral law. Not all laws, not everything in physics is moral. There is one law in physics. So the fact that some laws or some other things in nature can cause immoral things does not mean that nothing in nature could be moral. You're conflating the fact that there is one thing in nature that is moral and other things do immoral things. Oh my God.
Yeah, but my issue, Tom,
So
is this: like you
still
never
nothing wrong
answered
with it,
the
right?
question. Yeah, you never answered the question: is a father
I
having
answered that
sex?
4 times. I answered that
No,
four
you
times.
didn't.
It is
You
not
kept
immoral.
mentioning odds. It's either the case or it's moral or it's not. You're saying that
It
it is
is not
moral for them.
immoral. It is not immoral. I've literally answered that like 7 times. Holy shit.
You have no grounding to say
Okay,
that
so
based on
in
your
other
argument.
words, to have deformed
Yes, I
babies
do.
is somehow moral, right? Is that what you're saying? Having deformed babies is moral.
Babies are not deformed simply because of incest. So that's a false analogy.
So
Simply the
if
act
it
of
is the
having
case that
no,
there's a whole
stop. Let me finish.
Mhm.
So you're conflating the act of having sex with a parent and a child, which is not immoral, and then like deliberately creating some kind of a deformed child. Those are two separate things. Those are not the same action. You're conflating the two. Is a consenting parent having sex with a consenting child immoral? No, it is definitely not.
For the purpose of having children.
Is not immoral because again, incest doesn't necessarily lead to deformed babies. There's lots of incest all over the world and the babies come out fine. The fact that there is incest
Now,
does not necessarily mean the baby is going to be deformed.
what about animals? What about a human being having sex with an animal?
Animals do not have the ability to consent. Animals are essentially synonymous with children, so they, because of their
Okay.
intellectual incapacity, it is immoral.
So animals cannot consent when they're killed, cooked, eaten. Do you agree?
That is also immoral. Yes, veganism is
Okay,
the moral correct
now
position.
now you're saying that carnivorism or omnivorism is immoral. And you're
Yes,
going to appeal to nature to say this?
Yes, vegans are the morally correct position, and yes, I'm using nature to say this, like all moral naturalists do.
And so, with respects to, let's say, morality, are you claiming it goes through all time, or does it evolve? Does morality evolve naturally, or how's your view
No,
on
it's a
that?
law of physics. It doesn't change. It goes through all nature. But
Ah.
neither of you have actually addressed the points. So none of you have addressed my argument here, which is that wait, stop. So you guys have not addressed my argument here that a law of nature grounding in morality is better than an imaginary sky daddy with no evidence.
Yeah, I would
That's
simply.
my claim.
I would simply say that the law saying that thou shalt not, have incest relations, is sufficient. But you're saying now you're rather than a simple command, do not have sex with family members, that comes from God especially, and you're saying that we don't need that God command. We can somehow figure it out in a naturalistic way, and I'm questioning whether. For example, a pre-agrarian society in which there is no agriculture, in which they are hunting, gathering, and eating meat, you're saying that they were acting immorally because there's a sense of a universal understanding. Would that be correct?
How does that answer my question?
In a pre-agrarian society,
stop.
You're saying that it is
Stop.
The answer
I've been
is
answering
yes
your
or
questions
no,
for like a half an hour. You guys haven't answered my question ever.
I just answered it.
No, you didn't answer anything. My question is how is an imaginary sky daddy with no evidence who drowned millions of babies a better grounds for morality than a law of physics?
Well, God, it would be justified in to destroy what He creates, in the sense that if they sin against His laws, He is the arbiter and the giver and taker of life is justified. Now, back to the question of whether.
No, that's not an answer. That's not an answer. That's not an answer. So the question
you've been avoiding questions all day, Tom.
No, I've literally answered all of your questions like 5 times. So the question is how is an imaginary sky daddy with no evidence who drowned millions of babies a better grounds for morality than the law of physics? Saying he's justified doesn't answer the question. How does the magical invisible sky daddy with no evidence ground morality?
Yeah, it does not.
That's the question.
It does not matter if there's evidence or not. The question is whether the standard imposed in the scripture is the better basis than naturalism that's unwritten and it seems to me that you're trying to determine through naturalistic processes whether it is, and I just gave you certain examples you refuse. Like in my case, I could just refer to the scripture. Very simple. There's
how
no thinking about it. There's no peer review necessary. All I'm asking is omnivorism in a pre-agrarian society of which they don't have agriculture, where they're hunting meat. All I'm asking is it back then, is it immoral?
Yes, killing
or
is
not?
always immoral.
I mean, I don't know why.
What. Yes, killing is always immoral. No matter what. Now let's go back to my question, which you still haven't answered. How is the magical, invisible sky daddy with no evidence better to explain morality than a law of physics?
I just explained it.
I can't answer that question.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what he's talking about.
Oh, I do know what he's talking about. I mean,
well, no,
I already explained.
He said an
go ahead.
invisible sky daddy with no evidence. That's uninformative to
that's
me.
That's a literal definition of the Christian God. Now, how does the invisible sky daddy with no evidence?
God, really?
Yes.
Tom, did you used to be a theist? Did you used to be a Christian?
How does the invisible sky daddy for a better grounds than the law of physics?
That's an uninformative question. You may want to reformulate that question because you used to believe in God.
Everyone in the audience understands what I'm asking. Everyone knows what I'm asking.
You actually said that you believed in God and actually was very upset.
This isn't answering the question.
Determined God did not exist. So apparently God was self-evident for you, which would be evidence for God. So to say there's literally no evidence
so you're going to answer the question.
Untrue. So no, I'm not going to answer the question. You need to reformulate it.
Okay. How is the magical sky daddy with no evidence who drowned millions of babies?
For God.
How is the magical sky daddy with no evidence a better grounds for morality than a law of physics?
I guess John can answer that question because I'm not going to answer it.
Yeah, I actually already answered it. I mean, irrespective of whether there's evidence or not, I already told you that there is an objective basis by which we live, and the evidence, anthropological evidence, biological evolutionary evidence shows that religion serves to benefit the survival of the human species. And if you think that that's not good or naturalistic or any other sense, you're still avoiding the question, sir, of whether hunting, right? You're claiming that it served to support the survival of the human species. And so now you're claiming that now it serves to benefit the survival of the human species is immoral.
Go back. So you seem to be saying that if something benefits survival or evolution, then it's more likely to be true. Is that what you're saying?
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm saying that what you are saying is that you're claiming something to be immoral when
I don't care about my position. I want your answer to the question: how is a magical, invisible sky daddy who murdered millions of babies and has no evidence it exists a better grounds for morality? And it seemed like you said the belief in the magical, invisible sky daddy benefits evolution or benefits life or something. That seemed to be your answer.
Oh shit, it's TJump. What's up, man?
What I am saying is that whether you think there's evidence or not, that's a whole different other discussion.
I didn't say anything about evidence. I don't care about evidence. Right. I'm asking you.
You're the one. Yeah, but you're the one. Yeah, you're the one characterizing. Yeah, you're the one characterizing there being no evidence, sky daddy,
I don't care about evidence. I'm asking you, how is your magical, invisible sky daddy a better grounds for morality in whatever way you want? I don't care if it's evidence. I don't care if it's like virtues. I don't care. Tell me how the magical, invisible sky daddy who drowned millions of babies, who has zero evidence that it exists, is a better explanation of morality. What is your justification? Don't ask me about evidence. I don't care. Tell me what you think.
And I would say that with regard to the survival of the human species, that it is beneficial. That is not to say that it is good in a moral sense, but what I'm saying is that there are clearly scientific benefits to the survival of the human species. And once again, you're avoiding the question. Once again, you're already trying to interrupt me.
Because I'm trying to get you to answer the question.
All day is the point where you're talking about.
I'm trying to get you to answer the question, and you don't answer it.
So you're the one not answering questions, Tom.
I let you ask questions for 30 minutes.
I asked you two simple questions. You did not answer either. I only asked you two questions.
I've answered every one of your questions for 30 minutes.
No, you did not.
Now it's my turn. So you didn't answer the question. You said again that belief in a sky daddy is good for survival, Does that mean it's true? You said no. So that isn't a better reason. That doesn't give you a reason to believe in the Sky Daddy. So again, you need to provide a reason of why an invisible Sky Daddy with no evidence is a better grounds for morality than a law of physics. I'm saying a law of physics is better because laws of physics we know exist and aren't just imaginary. So that's a good reason that laws of physics is a better explanation than invisible Sky Daddy.
I would claim that survival is better than extinction for the human race. Do you deny that?
I agree.
Start there.
I agree. Yes,
oh,
I
you
agree.
do agree.
Yes.
Why? Why would you agree?
I like survival, but how does this answer the question?
Who cares what you personally like? Why would that be better is my question. So the question is, if it is the case that you do agree, irrespective of why you agree, right? That's not the question.
How does this answer my question?
No, you're the one avoiding my question in order to answer.
I've already answered all of your stupid
avoided
questions.
Two simple. No, you did not, sir. You did not, or else I wouldn't be repeating it. Every time I go back,
my question first.
Every time I go back to the pre-agrarian society, you interrupt me because you want to avoid the question.
I've already answered that question.
No, you did not.
I've asked one.
No, you did not.
One question, and I haven't got an answer. My one question.
I did.
No, you didn't. No, I'm like walking through the stupid things you said here. So I asked, how is a magical Sky Daddy who drowned millions of babies a better explanation than a law of physics? Laws of physics have evidence. Magical Sky Daddies have no evidence. And you said, because it's good for survival. And I asked you, does the fact it's good for survival mean it's true? You said no.
That's right.
Which means that's not a reason to think the Sky Daddy is a better grounds. If it doesn't actually make it true or more likely to be true, then that isn't a reason to think the magical Sky Daddy is a better grounds. So it doesn't answer my question. My question is, why do you guys think a magical invisible Sky Daddy who has no evidence is better than a law of physics which has lots of evidence?
Yeah, I mean, we know in nature, right? It's not about reality. I don't know if you ever read books like, The Case Against Reality by Donald Hoffman. It is not the case that when animals replicate their DNA that they're understanding some sort of truth value. It is the case that oftentimes deception, it benefits the survival of that particular species. And being that the case that you're talking about human survival, you are agreeing that it is a benefit. And so you agree that not only so, it is a good thing, right? In a moral sense.
How does this answer my question?
The question has nothing to do with the truth value of whether God exists or not.
So
with respect to your statements,
you would have to conclude theism is the moral position, right? Because it's beneficial to survival.
No.
That's my whole point, man. That's exactly my point.
Good point, John. I think that's a great point.
So if his argument is that anything that's beneficial to survival, I must say is moral, like, no, that's wrong, but it doesn't answer my question. So again, my question was, how is Sky Daddy better than law of physics? Sky Daddy has no evidence. It's like laws of physics have lots of evidence, like rocks. So saying that my view must entail all things that are beneficial to survival are moral, it does not. My view does not entail that.
Do you reject consequentialism in your moral view or utilitarianism, just out of curiosity?
Yes, those are not objectively moral stances. Those are pragmatic.
Okay, so then you have this view of objective morality, and you have not demonstrated in a sense of how you get to it, right? You just arbitrarily say, yes, that's moral, yes, that's immoral. You've not established any so scientific or naturalistic standard by which you come to these determinations. It seems to me you're not considering the well-being of individuals. I've already investigated that. You seem to reject that as a moral basis. And so you keep talking about a naturalistic basis of morality, and when I ask you a basic question like, why is it that a pre-agrarian society eating animals is immoral, you're avoiding the question time and time again. Why is it the case? You're claiming it's immoral, that it was universal in a sense, timeless, right, objective.
What is the topic of the debate? John, what is the topic of the debate?
The topic of the debate is a naturalistic explanation is better than a God explanation. That is the topic, correct?
So it doesn't matter what you say.
So you have not demonstrated.
Hold up. So it doesn't matter what you don't like about naturalism. My argument is that invisible sky daddy with no evidence is worse than naturalism, and you need to provide a reason why that's not the case.
Okay? How are you attempting to establish better in this situation?
Why are you still bringing up naturalism?
No, you're claiming that it's better. You
naturalism.
provided absolutely no reason. You're just trying to do comparative analysis and saying that this invisible sky daddy with no evidence that's killing babies, and you're repeating that ad nauseum as if it's even a point. It's not. You can repeat it till the cows come home. That does not establish. You beg the question that it's better.
I think we're making progress. So my argument here is that if we see a thing we both agree exists, so like let's say we see a hoof print in the snow, what's the better explanation? It was done by a horse or it was done by a unicorn? Obviously, the horse is a better explanation because there's lots of past evidence horses actually exist. Saying a unicorn did it is stupid because there's no past evidence unicorns exist.
It does not. Existence does not answer whether it's good or not. That's what we're talking about.
Stop. So if we agree something exists like morality is like the hoof print in the snow. We both agree it exists. And we want to know what is the better explanation of morality existing. Is it a thing that has no evidence like a unicorn or a god, or is it a thing that has evidence like a horse or a law of physics? Which is the better explanation? Just like horses are a better explanation of the hoof print. One sec. Just like horses are better explanations of the hoof print because we know horses exist, laws of physics are a better explanation of morality because we know laws of physics exist. Saying an invisible thing that we have no evidence exists like a unicorn or a god is a terrible explanation because it's no better than a unicorn or a farting leprechaun.
What I am contending that irrespective of whether God exists or not, you have still not explained why a naturalistic explanation is that of a God explanation, irrespective. Now, that's the important part of whether God is true or not.
What? I literally just explained that.
And so, if it is the case that God does not exist, or God being existing is not true, it still does not explain, and you fail to explain why a naturalistic explanation is better than a God explanation, even if it's false. You've not explained that.
I literally just explained that. So anything that we see, any phenomenon in reality that we see, a better explanation of that phenomenon is something that we know exists and not something that we don't have any evidence exists. Always, no matter what, for everything.
And so you acknowledge that there is benefit from a religious society over that of a secular society. In fact, 4 times that of 4x of the secular society.
I have no idea what you're saying.
I'm giving you peer-reviewed information as far as the benefits to the survival of the human species.
Yes,
that
there
being
are
of
lots
religious,
of false beliefs.
irrespective of whether the proposition God exists
literally
or not is true.
So again,
you seem to want to keep focusing on
you are saying
the existence of God. You seem to want to harp on the existence of. You seem to be wanting to harp on this sky daddy there's no evidence for, that murders babies. You said that I don't know how many times, 7, 8, 9 times.
Again,
as if
not
it's meaningful.
The question.
It is not meaningful. My point, Tom, is simply that the question of a moral basis, right? Being better than a God basis, right? My contention is not that God exists, right? It is certainly not the debate here. The debate is on morality, what ought to be done. You're claiming that it has no bearing of morality of whether something is right or wrong, which I find interesting. But I mean, more importantly,
no, I never said that. You're just making shit up.
You seem to have some moral value, and you're not willing to explain how what is the determinative process by which. I know the determinative process as far as morality, that would be scripture, an objective basis outside our opinions, feelings, emotions, right? It's not mind dependent, therefore it's not
literally
subjective,
an opinion,
right? And so my only point is that what you're saying seems to me nothing but your opinions, feelings, and emotions with regard to a particular matter. There's no scientific methodology by which you're determining that carnivorism in a pre-agrarian society is immoral. You've not established that whatsoever, and no methodology by which to establish it. You just arbitrarily by fiat claim that was immoral, and veganism is moral.
I've already answered all of that. Let me tell you again all of the things I said before. The methodology you use is subjective garbage. Look at scripture and have an opinion about what it says. The methodology philosophers use in moral naturalism is look at the evidence of moral intuition and moral progress and philosophical dilemmas and try to make a principle that describes the patterns in the evidence. So we have an actual good methodology. Yours is look at a book written 3,000 years ago and interpret it with your subjective interpretation. So your methodology is garbage. Mine is good.
So what is the method by which to determine that carnivorism in a pre-agrarian society, which is damaging if they did not eat meat? Yeah, no, you did not. You just said, well, that was immoral. That's all you said.
No,
you think that's an answer? That's pathetic. That's a pathetic answer, Tom. You know what? Tom, by appealing to naturalism, by fiat, declare that is immoral. It was immoral then, and it's immoral now. That's all you said. That's literally all you said.
No, what I said is that in philosophy, we have a methodology using non-bullshit scripture where we look at the evidence of moral intuition, moral progress, and philosophical dilemmas. If we analyze these things, we can plot out the different data points, make a principle that describes the data points, and extrapolate from that principle what morality would be for every possible point in time, for every possible society, including all of your stupid examples. So
and
we have
without
a methodology.
God...
Wait, stop. So we have a methodology. Yours is look at a bullshit book that is wrong and drowns babies. Ours is good. So ours is better on the methodology, and ours is better on the grounding. Saying a law of physics is better than an imaginary sky daddy.
No.
So both in the ontology and in the epistemology, naturalism is better.
And if you're gonna hang on, let me just say this, Matt, very quickly. If I could just say this.
Go pretty soon.
Okay. You know, Tom, if you're gonna appeal to philosophy, and you're gonna consider a world that has no God, the rational conclusion is moral anti-realism. And moral nihilism, more specifically,
no, it's not.
Rather than your absurd notion of objective morality,
it's not. Why do you think that?
Which has no philosophical basis.
No, it's not. Why do you think that? In fact, you're making assertions with no evidence. You're making shit up, John. You need to support that bullshit claim you just made that somehow anti-realism is the default position. Like, no, literally, it's not.
I
you
said
don't need a God for morality.
It's the reasonable position, is what I said.
No, it's not. Like, I could say anti-realism is the reasonable position if you think there's a magical sky daddy.
You're the one who arbitrarily is appealing to philosophy, and all I did was.
What does arbitrary mean, John?
All I did. You didn't support your claim.
John?
Wait a minute. You didn't support your claim, and I didn't support my claim. But all I'm saying is, anyone could make an arbitrary claim like that.
What does arbitrary mean, John? How am I arbitrarily applying philosophy?
What you're saying is that you have brought absolutely no reason to say that you just appeal to philosophy,
using philosophy. How am I arbitrarily using philosophy, John?
No, you're claiming philosophy as some sort of authority on morality, which is laughable.
You'd be arbitrarily using philosophy because I'm looking at several atheists in this room who think moral realism.
Yes, of course I'm using philosophy.
Matt.
Of course I'm using philosophy. The point I was arguing was the arbitrary part. Matt.
So
you're arbitrarily assigning it as a standard.
Coming to contradictive conclusions here, like Jack Angstreich would be a moral anti-realist.
Dumbass.
Well, I don't know about that,
Matt. Oh my God.
Hades a moral anti-realist.
Oh my God, you're so dumb. So
Jackson's a moral
anti-realist. So
holy shit! None of this matters, Matt. Stop talking about other people who don't matter to the debate.
Conclusion to other people. That's the point. So it's kind of arbitrary how you use philosophy.
Holy shit, you're dumbass.
So that's to answer your question.
Dumbass. Literally, if you had listened to what I had said, the question was, what does arbitrary mean, and how am I arbitrarily using philosophy?
You're just kind of
Saying
picking and
other
choosing
people
what
come to
philosophy
other
you want. That's
conclusions
what
is irrelevant.
arbitrary is.
Matt, listen to the words
That's what philosophy
before
is.
you
I'm saying you're
respond.
making
Shut up.
philosophy
Close
an
your dumb
arbitrary
mouth.
standard for
Close your
morality.
dumb
That's
mouth.
why philosophy
Close your
leads
dumb
to
mouth, Matt.
contradictive conclusions.
Close your dumb mouth, Matt. You got to listen to the words before you open your mouth. So my question
I
was,
don't need to listen to
how
your words. You
am
ask a
I
question,
applying
it's
it
answered.
arbitrarily?
Now,
You
I do
gotta
find
shut up,
it
Matt.
problematic that
You've
Tom
got to
just
shut up,
sits on
Matt.
his
You've
ass
got to
here
shut up,
and
Matt, because
doesn't do
literally
any
nothing you
kind of
said,
moderating here,
nothing you
other
said here is relevant. So
Tom,
can we get Matt to shut up so I can actually move on with some topics here? So again, my question is how am I arbitrarily using philosophy? Matt's dumbass response was that, well, of course I'm using philosophy. Like, of course I know I'm using philosophy. The question was, how am I arbitrarily using it? What is the arbitrary point?
TJump, I didn't say that you're arbitrarily using philosophy. What I did say is that you're arbitrarily making philosophy a standard by which to establish more objective moral values and duties. This is what I'm claiming.
No. Philosophy doesn't determine that. Philosophy is just a way to evaluate like different methodologies. The philosophy doesn't determine morality.
And so in other words, you're the one claiming objective morality, right? You're the one appealing to science as some sort of what? Some methodology, standard, right? And what I'm saying is that if it is the case that philosophers reason these things, and to say that this is somehow consequential, utilitarian, which you reject, right? All of these things, you still have not established why philosophy in any way whatsoever established something to be objectively moral or not.
Oh my God. So again, my argument here is that philosophy is better than dumbass scripture. That's the argument here.
Right.
Using philosophy as a methodology to determine morality is a better methodology than silly scripture.
Right. And so, I mean, I've already addressed that, right? In the sense that
how
there are, like, it seems to me you're just saying that this is moral, objectively moral. You're saying science, naturalism, philosophy. You're just making these baseless claims.
Wait,
you're not establishing it. How that is the case? Why I ought to accept that, which I don't.
One second.
So you're saying that I ought to accept that.
One second, John. So why do you think scripture is a more reliable way to gain knowledge of anything than science and philosophy?
I would say that it's time tested in the sense that the natural sciences, in fact, acknowledge that religion is beneficial to the survival of the human species. If you're more than welcome to reject peer-reviewed science, there's plenty of it with regard to anthropology, with regard to biological evolution. I mean, this is a fact. If you that, like I gave you the statistics, 4 times more likely to survive in secular society who wants to what? Appeal to philosophy? Are you kidding me? I mean, you're going to say somehow, and you're the one that acknowledges that survival of the human species is good. You're the one acknowledging that.
John, you keep bringing up the survival of the human species as if that indicates truth, but I literally asked you, does the fact that something benefits survival mean that it's true? You said no.
Yeah, and so yes. And so once again,
so literally nothing you just said is evidence. Nothing you said addresses the topic. You just admitted that your main argument is dumb as shit.
Let me ask you a question. Does truth establishes what is good or bad?
Yes.
Oh, it does.
Yes, literally, if one moral theory is true, then that's going to tell you which things are good and which things are bad.
So once again, you're claiming that it is true there are moral facts, but you're not going to really discuss what these moral facts are. It's just out there in the ether somewhere, and we have to discover them
I've literally
philosophically,
been discussing what the grounds is. So in order to know what the moral facts are, you have to know what the grounds is, because the moral facts are determined by whatever grounds them.
Well, what does ground them? Nature? What grounds them?
Yes, nature grounds them.
Wait a minute.
Yes.
You're the one that earlier said that the logically fallacious appeal to nature, and you're the one that agreed that it's logically fallacious. In other words, if animals
I literally never brought up the appeal to nature fallacy, and it's not.
But you agree it's a fallacy, right? You agree it's a fallacy,
Yes,
correct?
but saying there is a thing
Okay.
in nature and
That's
that is
what
true isn't an appeal to nature fallacy.
So in other words, what like a polar bear eating their young, then
Was not a
what?
part of my
You're gonna
argument.
Do you assign that as immoral or moral? It's just it happens in
What does that
nature.
have to do with
Whether
the topic,
you know
John?
my point is this, okay? And this is I don't know how many times I'm gonna have to stress this. You're claiming that somehow a naturalistic explanation of objective moral values and duties is superior than that of in your words, a god, a sky daddy that has no evidence that kills babies in flood.
Yes, that
This
is
is what you
correct.
said, right?
Yeah.
And so my
correct.
point is that you have not, up until this entire time, supported whatsoever. That you just kept repeating a claim, and you can't
No,
appeal to. You don't want to appeal to some sort of
John,
consequential
let me answer that again.
utilitarian view.
Let me give you the reason. The reason naturalism is better than theism is because, one, we have evidence laws of physics exist. That's the first reason. So because laws of physics, we know they exist, that means that a potential law of physics to explain morality is a better explanation than something we don't have any evidence that exists. So that's one reason naturalism is better. Second reason naturalism is better is the methodology we use to try to determine something is moral is by looking at the evidence. We look at moral intuitions, we look at moral progress, we look at moral dilemmas, and we try to compile that into a piece of evidence and data which we can use to extrapolate what morality will look like. This is better than looking at silly scriptures and trying to interpret them from 2,000 years ago. So the natural one is better for two reasons. One, it's grounded in a thing we know exists. That's better than the theism. And two, we use an actual methodology that's been verified and time tested, like philosophy, rather than looking at silly scriptures. So that's two reasons why naturalism is better than theism to explain literally everything.
Okay, so I've listened to what you just said. Interestingly enough, you didn't mention truth there once. So I have a simple question for. Wait. I have a simple question, TJump. If God is true, is a theistic explanation better? True or false?
If God is true, then is a theistic explanation better? Like if there was more evidence, it would be better, sure.
No. If the proposition of God being true, God existing is true, is by that truth value automatically, irrespective of the methodology, irrespective of anything, is it simply a better and superior methodology by which we establish what is moral?
Well, truth isn't a methodology. So if we're asking what is the better explanation, that means the thing with the most evidence.
Better explanation, I should have said.
Right. So if God could exist, so God could exist and be like deistic, and we know nothing about him, and there could be more evidence of a different hypothesis. Just the fact that God exists wouldn't make him the best explanation. It would just make him true. So something being the best explanation is the thing that has the most rational justification to believe it.
So you do seem to agree with me. Whether God exists or not has no bearing on whether it's good or not. Because I asked you, you kept talking about truth and then this, and I was thinking, well, why would that matter? And so if God exists, you are saying, according to your reasoning, that if it is the case that God exists, it is a better explanation. Would that be correct, once again?
Well, I have no idea what you said there in the second part, but my argument is, again, we have evidence some things do exist, and saying those some things caused morality is a better explanation than saying the things that we don't have evidence exists cause morality. So whether or not God exists is irrelevant. Because we have no evidence he exists, he's a terrible explanation. He's not the best explanation. It would be a better explanation to posit something we do know exists caused it.
And I see a little bit of incoherence in your series of statements, because earlier you were appealing to truth, right? And the value of truth and how it relates to morality.
Yes,
and I was thinking that didn't make any sense. And then when I ask you the pertinent question, which is if God exists, is the theistic a better explanation? Is theism a better explanation for moral values and duties, objective moral values and duties? And you said no.
Yes, because you're
You
confusing
don't find that
epistemology
contradictory?
no, there's no contradiction there. This is just basic epistemology and ontology, and you're just confusing the two. So what makes something moral is contingent on the ontology of what morality is. So if morality is grounded in God's nature, what makes something moral, or the truth statement, murdering babies is moral, is going to be true or false based on whatever is true, whether or not we know it. But the best explanation is completely contingent on the things that we know. So we have to have evidence to indicate the best explanation. And the best explanation is going to be the best explanation regardless of what is true, because we don't have access to truth. We have access to evidence. So if we're trying to determine what is the best explanation, we have to use evidence. And if what morality actually is, if we want to know that murdering babies is objectively wrong, that's going to be contingent on the ontology. So it is not a contradiction to say that truth matters to what morality is, but what the best explanation is what the evidence matters to.
Now, I'm very glad you went to ontology. So if it is the case that good is grounded upon the nature of God, and it is a case that God exists, and that good is grounded upon that goodness, then it stands to reason that that is the best explanation, irrespective of any science, irrespective of any philosophy. In the case, you don't agree with that.
No, that's literally
all I'm saying is,
just
if it is the case,
holy shit.
If it is the case that God exists, you would, I would assume, acquiesce that from an ontological basis, that good being grounded in God, that would be the best explanation for objective moral values and duties.
Oh my God, I literally just explained this. The difference between ontology and epistemology. Something can be true and not be the best explanation because we have no evidence for it. The best explanation back 400 years ago was that Newtonian gravity was correct. It was false. Einsteinian gravity is closer to being correct. Is Einsteinian gravity the better explanation 400 years ago? No, because they had no evidence for it. They did have evidence for Newtonian gravity. So at the time, when they only had evidence for Newtonian gravity was the best explanation. The fact that it's true doesn't make it the best explanation. The fact that we have evidence is what makes it the best explanation.
So what I would say is that when you think about gravity, I mean, gravity either exists or does not exist, and we have a certain naturalistic understanding that progresses over time in terms of Einstein's view and Newton's view. But what I'm also saying is that with respects to God, right, if it is a case that we have a different understanding of God, the God that exists, it is that truth, it is that ontology that grounds the epistemological understanding of what is moral and what is not moral. You cannot separate it in the sense that the grounding is ontological, but the understanding, the knowledge is epistemological. And so when I kept asking you about the epistemology, you kept going to ontology, and then once I go to ontology, now you're going to epistemology. You're just doing this little shuffle, dance back and forth. I asked you very simply about certain propositions, whether they are moral or not, objectively so. You had no answer for them.
I literally answered all of your questions.
And then you kept saying this is better, that this is better, this is the discussion, and I don't mind that discussion, but you still never supported your own
literally answered all of your questions. So when I asked a question about ontology, you brought up an irrelevant question about epistemology, and I had to explain the difference between the two, because you brought up an irrelevant response. I asked a question about ontology, you brought up an irrelevant response. I didn't confuse the two, you did. So the problem here is that every time I ask a question, you deflect to your own irrelevant question that is the opposite field to my question. And then you blame me for it because you don't understand how debate works. So I answered every one of your questions. In ontology, naturalism is better because it is grounded in things we know exist, like laws of physics. In epistemology, naturalism is better because we use philosophy and science, which is better than scripture. So naturalism is better in both ontology and epistemology. It's better in both. But I think it's about an hour. So that's let's call it. It's an hour.
Okay. for the discussion, Tom. I really appreciate it.
Yep, thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Okay.
That was great. Tom, I'm supposed to be on Modern Day Debates in 2 weeks, or 1 week, and it's going to be against Muslim apologists. So I looked up your debate with him to see if I needed to prepare at all for his arguments, and I saw 2 seconds of him arguing the literary miracle of the Quran. I was just like, okay, this guy's a clown. But they said you might be coming on, and we're doing a team debate. Are you coming? Is anybody talking?
Probably went to the bathroom or something like that.
Great debate. TJump won that one.
I really want to see Brenda versus TJump sometime.
Don't they agree?
Oh, there's got probably not on morality. No, they're both physicalists and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, if God exists, then it doesn't matter whether something is moral or not. That's interesting.
Well, that right there alone, you lose. It's the premise of an if. When debating naturalism versus theism, you have nothing to stand on when it comes to that debate. That's why TJump won.
Well, John, how'd you think it went?
Well, I mean, I thought that it didn't progress other than he was just repeating certain things over and over and over again, as if there was some sort of progress. I'm not satisfied with that. I don't think he answered my questions.
You know, in the beginning when Matt Adams just couldn't shut up, didn't you feel like it's like a mom with a really bad spoiled kid at the mall or something? You're just it's so early that he was being so obtuse. I didn't understand that.
I think you had to let it out, Danny, this morning, very early this morning. There was about 5 guys that kept muting him, ended up kicking him out of the room. He was dropping F-bombs here and there, and it could have led to
Well, I don't think people were muting him, maybe here and there, but he left on his own accord, so far as I know. Yeah, he rage quit. He said, shut the fuck up or whatever, and then he left, and then he started his own room. Nobody joined because it's a Matt Adams room. And then he came back, so he couldn't have been kicked. I mean, unless the later on, but I highly doubt that.
I agree. He was in that mode. Whenever he's triggered, think about Matt. He really bullies and just continues to talk. It doesn't matter, and he will do that. And that's the Matt Adams I know, the good, bad, or indifferent.
So you thought TJump wasn't answering your questions, John? Because I thought he was answering a fair few, but maybe not. I don't know if you thought he's.
Well, I was trying to.
I heard him answer all the questions. All questions were answered.
Well, no, I asked him a very simple question, about if something is moral or not, and I was telling him, well, this is the explanation in the Bible why it's immoral. It's not that complicated, and he came up with a reason, and then I asked him why, and he would not come up with the reason, and so then I found out it's universal in his view that morals don't evolve, and so now I'm looking at it over time. He claims that with bestiality, the animal cannot consent, and then so naturally he's going to say, if he's consistent, he's going to say veganism is immoral, which he did, which I expected. And then when you go add it all together,
he said veganism was moral. He said
that's
eating
what I
meat
said.
is the immoral. No, you said the
That's what I
opposite,
said.
dude. No, you
Yes,
said
and then
veganism
so
is
what?
immoral.
Right, James. And then so you take that line of reasoning, and then you bring it over time, universal now. You bring it to not. I mean, right now we have the means for agriculture, but prior to that, even just over 10,000 years ago, that we were like a hunting society. And then when he could not, he actually had to claim that was immoral as well, right?
He did.
Which that.
Yeah, he said
which
that. Yeah.
which. But my point was that served to benefit the survival of the human species. He could not explain. He could not explain why back then he avoided it like the plague 5 or 6 times. He could not explain why it was immoral back then.
Yeah, but you didn't actually ask him why. You just kept repeating the same
I
question.
did. He did not
saying,
let me.
No. Hold on.
John,
Hold on. No, you actually didn't let him elaborate. I don't know if you realize that, because you just kept saying, yeah, but what about this? Is it immoral? And he's like, yes, right. But I don't remember you saying like, well, why is it immoral, right? That would have been a better question.
I literally asked him.
You didn't. You didn't. You just
John,
kept asking him if it was
literally, if you
immoral.
play the replay, I was gonna ask him, why is it immoral in the pre-agrarian society? And literally when I went there, if you notice, he cut me off at least 5 or 6 times when I attempted to, each time.
Yeah, this is obviously